The modern radiologist operates under an immense physical and cognitive load, often interpreting thousands of images in a single shift. This chart tracks the resulting operational bottleneck. As aging demographics and expanded screening protocols drive a rise in imaging volume, radiologist workforce capacity has remained stagnant. This disparity caused outpatient imaging turnaround times to double between 2014 and 2023. The human toll of this widening gap is quantifiable. Over 53% of practicing radiologists now report severe professional burnout. That bottleneck creates measurable delays across the hospital. In emergency departments, the wait for an interpretation of a CT scan or radiograph can add up to 150 minutes to a patient's stay before a clinical decision is finalized. In 2026, the FDA introduced a catalyst designed to address this constraint by issuing breakthrough device designations for generative AI platforms capable of drafting preliminary radiology reports. Specific industry leaders secured this designation, notably Cognita for its vision language model for chest X-rays, and ADOC for its first read system, which is designed to draft text for life-threatening findings. With imaging demand outpacing the available workforce, the interpretation of a scan has become the primary rate-limiting step in diagnostic throughput. An FDA breakthrough device designation establishes a prioritized communication pathway with the agency. It provides accelerated feedback during development, though it does not grant immediate market clearance. This designation moves generative image-to-report systems from the laboratory into the category of regulated medical devices. To commercialize this technology and reach widespread clinical use, the industry must solve three simultaneous challenges across technology, policy, and economics. Technically, developers must minimize AI hallucinations. On the policy side, they must secure predictable CMS reimbursement through the new RAPID program. And economically, the industry must prepare for a repricing of radiologist compensation. Moving from diagnostic flagging to clinical drafting changes how software functions in the reading room, requiring updated validation frameworks and new reimbursement models. For decades, the baseline for radiology AI was computer-aided diagnosis, or CAD, powered by deep convolutional neural networks. This comparison illustrates the architectural shift. Traditional CAD systems act as visual highlighters, outputting bounding boxes and percentages over potential anomalies, but CAD only identifies the issue. The physician must still manually dictate the clinical report based on that visual flag. Multimodal foundation models, or MFMs, represent the successor technology. MFMs process raw pixel data from the scan and textual data from the patient's history at the same time. By synthesizing these visual and historical inputs, the MFM outputs a natural language preliminary report. The clinical objective of these models is to absorb the manual burden of typing and dictating standard findings. MFMs transition artificial intelligence from a passive visual highlighter to an active cognitive drafting assistant, changing the human-machine workflow. Cautionary tone. Active text generation introduces a failure mode unique to medical AI, the plausibility paradox. In radiology, a hallucination is a confident fabrication of a pathology not present on the scan, such as describing a 3-centimeter mass in a healthy lung.
The prevalence of this issue is significant. When interpreting complex cross-sectional imaging like MRIs, early model hallucination rates reached 78.3%. Traditional natural language processing metrics, like the Blue score, failed to catch these errors because they measure word overlap rather than clinical accuracy. To evaluate safety, the industry has shifted to metrics like F1 RADgraph, which specifically measure structural and factual correctness in the report. The solution to hallucinations is fact-aware multimodal retrieval augmented generation, or FACT-MM-RAG. Standard models rely on internal weights, filling ambiguous data with unverified guesses. RAG eliminates guessing by forcing the AI to query verified clinical reports, using retrieved facts as guardrails before generating text. Anchoring stochastic text generation to verified clinical facts is necessary before these systems can be safely deployed. Even with the technical safety addressed, medical startups face a massive commercial hurdle that industry insiders often call the valley of death. This chart visualizes the traditional timeline. A company achieves FDA authorization, then waits 12 months or longer for a CMS coverage decision. This delay prevents reimbursement. Without a billing mechanism, hospitals won't adopt the software, starving startups of capital. The federal government introduced a coordinated pathway to address this, the RAPID program, which stands for Regulatory Alignment for Predictable and Immediate Device Coverage. RAPID aligns CMS coverage requirements with FDA safety standards during the investigational device exemption phase. Manufacturers must agree on specific clinical targets for Medicare beneficiaries with both agencies before pivotal trials begin. If those clinical targets are met, CMS now issues a proposed national coverage decision concurrently on the day the FDA approves the device. This compresses the Medicare coverage gap from over a year to just 60 to 90 days. RAPID transforms the regulatory pipeline into a synchronized process, making clinical AI a viable near-term investment for hospitals and developers. Clinical implementation centers on a human-in-the-loop model, where AI drafts and the radiologist verifies. The human physician remains the necessary liability shield and the final arbiter of medical truth. This efficiency impacts relative value units, or RVUs, which dictate how physicians are compensated for their time. Consider the historical transition from analog wet film X-rays to digital picture archiving and communication systems. The shift to digital screens removed the physical labor of hanging films. This generated a 5% valuation drop in practice expense RVUs because the labor required per case was reduced. Generative AI drafting applies similar pressure by reducing the time spent on manual dictation. This graph compares historical RVU valuations against technological shifts. Following the valuation dip at the adoption of digital PACS, the industry expects a similar repricing for AI-assisted diagnostic billing. However, reduced time per case increases total patient throughput, reallocating the physician's time. By removing the friction of drafting reports, the physician can focus their cognitive bandwidth on complex clinical judgment. While generative AI solves the capacity bottleneck, the financial value of the radiologist will shift from the production of a report to the expert verification of its truth.